The biggest mistake I made when I first started raising quail was not being educated on all their biggest cons. Sure, they're cute, low maintenance, and excellent for homesteading, but nobody told me these tiny Tasmanian devils would spend every waking moment plotting their escape, and not in a logical way. Oh no. Quail have a quirky behavior where they seem to look for ways to escape their feathered bodies. These tiny ninjas are master escape artists, yet they don't always think things completely through. If they believe there is the slimmest chance of them being able to escape their luxurious accommodations for the wide open blue, they will attempt it with gusto. Zero hesitation, zero second guessing, just pure reckless abandon. And they often pick ways that are more likely to get them hurt than to get them out. You would think they do a little risk assessment. Maybe ask themselves, hey, does this escape route make sense? Will I survive it? Nope, not at all. These determined little buggers will wedge themselves into impossibly small spaces, and when they get stuck, they'll thrash so violently they don't make it if not found immediately. I cannot emphasize how ridiculous this is. I'm talking gaps so small I didn't even think air could fit through, but somehow the quail is like, hold my fermented feed, I got this. I learned my lesson quickly and checked every nook and cranny. And when I say every nook and cranny, I mean places you wouldn't even think could be a problem. I had to get creative and think like a mischievous toddler to ensure I didn't miss a thing. Imagine baby-proofing your house, but instead of worrying about crayons on the wall and toys in the toilet, you're trying to outsmart a bird that has the brain power of a walnut and the self-preservation instincts of a dodo bird. I even had to change out my roof situation. I found one quail dangling by a toe in the netting one day, just hanging there, like it suddenly regretted every choice that led it to that moment. Another one somehow got on top of the netting and under the tin. How? No idea. This is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night. And just when I thought I had seen it all, they found new ways to humble me. One managed to squeeze itself into a 1/4-inch gap between the brooder wall and the floor. Why? Who knows? Maybe it was chasing enlightenment. Maybe it wanted to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Another figured out how to launch itself straight up, only to smack its head and immediately regret every decision that led to that moment. The sheer commitment they have to bad ideas is honestly impressive. When quail get scared, they'll rocket straight up into the air and possibly break their necks. However, harm can be prevented by building the correct size enclosure. Keeping the roof under 2 feet tall prevents them from gaining enough momentum to unalive themselves. Building an area with a 6-foot or taller roof allows the quail enough time to slow down and prevents them from smashing into the material with enough force to end them. It's also highly recommended to use 1/2-inch hardware cloth. Quail will stick their little noggins out of chicken wire even when predators are near, and they tend to lose their heads. Literally. Chicken wire also doesn't keep out snakes, who will swallow an entire quail whole. Then there's the group panic effect. See, quail aren't just chaotic individuals. They love a good herd mentality disaster. One quail gets spooked? Congratulations, you now have a dozen flapping, flailing balls of fluff launching themselves in every direction. It doesn't even have to be a real threat. A shadow, a gust of wind, the sound of your own breathing, boom, absolute mayhem. You haven't known stress until you've watched a quail decide that running toward danger at full speed is the best course of action. For example, I was standing in the middle of my aviary one day when a quail shot up 4 feet, then flew full speed into the hardware cloth. There was a resounding bang, and it dropped to the ground and shook it off. I'm not kidding when I say the group standing with it shot up one by one and repeated the exact same attempt. 6 of them, as though with repeated effort, one 8-ounce bird would surely overpower steel. This also means that when one finds an escape route, the others perk up and follow suit. I've seen quail use the sheer force of peer pressure to convince an entire flock to make their terrible decisions. One finds a gap in the fencing, and suddenly you have an entire escape committee squeezing themselves through like some kind of feathered heist movie. They don't even stop to think about where they're going, just blind trust in their fearless, equally misguided leader. And let's talk about their inability to handle open space. You would think that after all this effort to escape, they'd be thrilled to finally be free. Nope. If a quail does manage to make a break for it, they have absolutely no survival instincts. They won't run and hide like a normal bird. Instead, they'll stand in the middle of the open yard, blinking at the sky like, now what? They're basically the avian equivalent of the dog that finally catches a car and has no idea what to do next. Which brings up the question, can you free-range quail like chickens? Nope. They'll either make themselves into easy prey or try migrating south for the winter, right in the middle of summer. So if you're thinking about raising quail, do yourself a favor. Don't underestimate their ability to Houdini their way into disaster. Triple check your setup, because if there's even the smallest, most impossible looking space, I promise you a quail will find it. And if you're not careful, you'll spend half your time playing an unwanted game of where's the quail, except the stakes are way higher and the contestants have no survival instincts. And if you think you've covered all the bases, think again. Quail have an uncanny ability to find new ways to create chaos. One day, you'll feel confident, thinking you finally outsmarted them. The next day, you'll find one wedged inside a waterer, another tangled in a feeder, and at least two have somehow teleported outside the pen with no explanation. Raising quail is a lesson in humility. It's a game of cat and mouse, where the mouse is an acrobatic, feather-escaping bird, and the cat is you, constantly trying to keep them alive despite their best efforts. But hey, at least they keep life interesting. And while we're on the topic of cons to raising quail, we might as well come out and be honest. Quail are divas, and if you don't cater to their devilish little demands, they will make you regret it. They have a zero patience tolerance when it comes to food and water. It doesn't matter if they are just eating 5 minutes ago. If they so much as think their food supply is running low, they go into full-blown panic mode. You'd swear they were living through the Great Depression with how dramatic they get. They don't just wait patiently for a refill. Oh no, they resort to pecking, shoving, and full-on WWE-style brawls. If, God forbid, a feeder ever runs out of food, they'll start launching personal attacks like they're settling lifelong grudges. So, if you want to avoid having scalped quail, follow these rules. Do not allow them to run out of food or water, and give them 1 square foot per quail. Another reason why you might have aggressive quail is due to genetics. If you tried everything to appease your flock and they refuse to back down on their antics, it's best for your current and future flocks to cull the culprit. And last but not least, quail are disastrous messes. They seem to go out of their way to throw food around no matter the feeder they have. They'll grab, fling, and scatter it like they're hosting some kind of tiny bird rave. If they have open feeders, they will crawl right in and do this little dance and kick food out with their feet. Luckily, I found a way to keep their waste to a minimum. The way to do this is by fermenting, or at least soaking, their food. I then put the feed in a chick feeder. The combination of the two makes so there's no waste at all. It's so much money saved. If you're not really the fermenting type, the only other way I've been able to cut down on feed waste is by using a gravity feeder with quail ports and pellets instead of crumbles. Don't let this video bring you down about quail. I went hard on their cons, but that's only to keep you from having to suffer from their dark side. If you provide quail with the right setup, they're incredibly easy to raise and an absolute delight to watch.